Buenas tardes. How you doing, everybody?
Buenas, buenas.
Hey, how you doing, Princesa?
I'm good. I didn't finish the book again.
Okay. I feel like it's a very, it's a big book. It's a big book.
You know, I just got past the whole bias period and it finally got better. So
It can be long. I'm gonna just let everybody trickle in, and then I'll get started in a bit. Okay. We got shy folks here. So I'll get started in 2 minutes. I know there's some few people coming in. So let me just check in with folks. I see an individual named Santiago, Awilda, and Urenia. Have you guys were in the first one? I know in the first one we had a lot of people.
I was in the first one.
Yes, I feel like I've seen your name many times.
And I was also.
Yes. And how did you guys finish the book as well?
Of course not. We're just gonna go off of like a memory of, what I already know, because I really wanted to talk with y'all. So I'm here, but no, I'm at Santana's second presidency, so I haven't gotten as far as I wanted, but I'm here.
It's a big book. It's a big book, so I know we're not gonna go sentence by sentence, so we will flow into all the different periods, because as you guys can see, during the second part of Santana's term, he got 5 different terms. Baez has 5 different terms. So it's like a lot of back and forth, a lot of assassinations.
I thought you said a lot of sass, and I was like, yeah, they were sassy. They just were going.
No, they were sassy, but I said assassinations.
Yeah. I personally, I don't know how everyone else did, but I hated that part so much with Santana and Baez. Like, that's why I couldn't finish the book, because that whole section took me so long. And it kept being like Santana, Baez, and it's a blur.
It's a blur. It's a lot. It's a lot of. Usually in my class, that's the hardest part, because from there, I think the next 2 chapters is a lot of back and forth. Yeah. And then I think it gets exciting when we start talking about Trujillo. Trujillo is a character. So, and Lili's. You guys know who's Lili?
I do.
You do? How about you, Urenia and Awilda?
Wait, what did you? I dropped my cracker, so I don't know what you asked me, but I heard my name.
I was just gonna say the same.
What you asked
you dropped your cracker too? Oh my god!
But I did it.
Not that
I rolled
part.
on the couch. I'm like, trying to get it. I'm sorry. What did you ask me?
No, do you guys know who Lili is? I was just trying to say the more.
Who, Lili?
Yes, Lili.
No, neither.
Ulysses was like his full name, I guess.
So we'll talk about him a lot. Him and Trujillo, I really love the 2 dictators. And the first dictator, I'll say a little more.
What chapter is Lili in? I'll read right quick while we're waiting.
I think it's like 14, like 13, 14.
Yeah, but no, we're gonna get started.
Oh, yeah. No. I didn't know that's what y'all called him. Yeah. No, I know who that is.
So we're just
is that like a common nickname for him?
Yeah, that's what that's his nickname that everybody calls him. So you will hear it in the Dominican
Gotcha.
from time to time. Or Papeleta de Lili he started printing his own money when he went bankrupt, and that was another problem. So we're letting this person in. So we're gonna just get started now because of timing. Can you guys see the screen? The Dominican Republic? Yes. Okay. Great.
Yes.
How you doing,
Yes.
Santana?
I'm great. How are you? How's everybody?
Jadira, I'm so happy to see you.
I'm happy to be seen.
I'm gonna use that.
You're very nice.
So I'll just get started now. So as you guys know, my name is Remysell Salas. You guys can call me Remy. Even though I just came back from Dominican Republic, nobody wants to call me Remy over there. They want to keep calling me Remysell. I'm like, please, it's a lot. But I'm a professor at CUNY. That's just a little bit of my introduction. Since we have a small group today, maybe we can go around and just check in. Just say your name and what brought you here. And we could get started with Princesa since she's fully ready.
Oh, okay. I'm Princesa. I'm like second generation Dominican, and I'm here because I don't know very much about the country's history at all. So just really learning, trying to figure out like where my life and other people's lives kind of fit in with the greater history of the island. Anyway, that was my rant. I'm sorry.
Okay. You could just pass it on to somebody else.
Jadira, because that's the only name I remember.
Thank you, Princesa. My name is Yadira. I am Dominican born, raised in New York City, currently live near Miami. The reason I am attracted to this book club is because I want to learn more of my history. I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner. So that is why I decided to join the book club, and I am enjoying every bit of history that we get to learn and to learn so that we don't repeat. Let's go with Awilda Cuevas.
Hello. So I'm from Washington State. My dad's Dominican, from Dominican Republic. My mom's Native American, Nez Perce enrolled tribal member, which I am as well. And so I know that for our Native American history, it's always important to know our roots. And so that's why I'm involved with the book club, so I can know more about my Dominican side as well.
Very cool. You want to just select somebody? I think that we have Santiago and Ureña that has not. You could just take them.
Santiago.
I don't know if he's on. Well, then we go with Saleta.
Such Dominican pronunciation. So my name is Salita, and I dropped my cracker, but I got it back. I threw it away. Just want to catch everybody up. I live in North Carolina, and like second person who spoke, Lo siento, I forgot your name. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm also a teacher, so this is like super awesome. I just really love all things Dominican. When I was in college, I did my study abroad in the Dominican Republic. Kind of sucked. My university refused to give me credit when I got back, even though they told me I could get it when I left, but that's okay, great experience. And in my brain, my dream job is like Dominican professor, but you know, that's not really popping in North Cackalack, so we'll see what it do. But I am a middle school Spanish teacher, and I am really amazing, truly, truly. And so I started following Dominican writers on Instagram. I thought they were pretty dope. And so when I saw this the first time, I was like, yay, people who like to talk about stuff I like to talk about. So I like details. I'm a Virgo, so I really enjoy like how in depth this is. I take notes and everything, but I also am not like reading fast enough to keep up with the club. So sorry, but I'm super excited to be here. Thanks.
Oh, nice to meet you. I will say that this is a tough, I say it's like the Bible because it's like it breaks everything down. I think all the other the following books are going to be more easy reads, and people will understand. But I just want people to get a foundation. I use this for my main class that I teach at CUNY. And one of the reasons why I want to know about Dominican culture is I just came back from DR that we have a very diverse population in the Dominican Republic. It's history like in every corner, and being the first place where Europeans came and ravished, just demolished whatever history was there before. It was just a first place of civilization in this side in terms of European civilization before we had native Taino civilization, which I'm going to do a little recap. But it's great to know and get to meet all of you today. Since this is part 2, it's usually a smaller session, but I just wanted to make sure we can get to it. And please, if you have any questions, just make sure that you press, put that raise your hand option, and we can always speak. We have an extra person that just came on, and perhaps you can just give an introduction of herself. Everybody got to know each other. Lucia Flores, you could just say your name and what brought you here today.
Sure. Hi, my name is Lucia, and I am here because I heard about this on Instagram and went to the very first time the Black Jacobins. Like really loved getting to know it's like a little bit more about it's like our history and it's like where we come from. I felt like a really like place to learn and to be critical too. And so yeah, I'm here for more community.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Flores. So we'll just get started now. I'll give you guys a heads up of the next book that's coming up. It's very exciting. I think a lot of people will be pleased. So I'll keep you guys updated with that. So I always like to start any session with a Dominican word of the day or a Dominican phrase of the day, just to make sure we get comfortable with each other. Can somebody tell me what Wachiman means? And Santana, please. She already.
It's a watchman. It's somebody that vigila la casa y la calle.
Yes. So it's a lot of Dominican words. So wachiman is used a lot right now for watchmen. We have a lot of words that come from English terms, especially from the U.S. occupation and intervention. We have multiple of those, which we're going to go into both today. And so wachiman is our Dominican word of the day. Who knew that word? Nobody else knew that word? Okay. Costa. Very good. So if you go to Dominican Republic, you're going to hear this a lot. You'll be like, what's a wachiman? So the overview of this book, like I mentioned before, this book is a study of the history of the Dominican Republic from the pre-colonial and the colonial periods to the present. It deals with the geographical, political, social, and economic factors that form the Dominican nation. Okay, so we're going to touch upon racial and ethnic and identity issues, as well as cultural development and different expressions. There's a lot of expressions that I just came back from the Dominican Republic, and every day is a new expression. I don't know where where folks are getting all these expressions from, but it's exciting. And also we'll get to learn about the economic and development and internal industries in the Dominican Republic. Okay? And the outward migration and the return migration that's currently happening right now. Have any of you have you all been to the Dominican Republic recently?
I've never been, personally.
You've never been?
No.
It's been a few years since I've been.
I'll be
I
there
haven't
next
been there
week.
either.
Oh, you showing off.
Showing off. Not,
you pointed like a Dominican when you were like.
Have it. Well, one thing that about Dominican Republic, especially in the capital and in the capital and the second capital, Santiago, is like a big. There's a lot of construction happening, and I feel like there's another gentrification happening. And the reason why people are investing so much is because many of the Dominicans that have been here for 40 years are starting to go back. And so we're going to talk about the return migration, which was kind of part of the plan for many Dominicans. For many Dominicans have made New York their home and South Florida. Okay. Right. So I'll keep it going. So a recap of the last session. Okay, so I know we spoke about the Taino people, which were the Arawak people and their culture. Can you guys tell me anything about them before we get started today? I went in depth last time. First chapter. No, crickets. Oh, wow.
I mean,
I had some.
Go ahead, Princesa.
All I said was that they had like caciques around the island.
Yes. So who is the cacique?
The leader, like the president, and they had 5 different tribes.
Yeah, they have multiple tribes in the Dominican Republic. The chief, but there were different kingdoms, but that was a lot of more big, smaller tribes in different areas. Yeah. Do you know the names of the other people in the social classes? No. So it was the Nitaino and Nabori. The Nabori was the working class. Nitaino was more like the noble, kind of high society, but they were not in royalty. So it's like in the middle. So, but majority of the people were Naboris, which is the working class of the Taino people and their culture. All right. So I would just go into I'm gonna give it like a timeline in terms of the beginning and bring us into the Dominican independence. So in 1496, the Spaniards set up the first Spanish colony in the Western Hemisphere in Santo Domingo, which serves as the capital today. All right, and by the next year, 1497, the Rolldown Rebellion came against Christopher Columbus's brothers because they were poor leaders, and they felt that they were above a lot of folk. Because they came in there, they felt that they can control many of the Spaniards that came there. But many of the people that came from Spain, they came there with ambition. They came in there to get titles. They came to get land. So it's not that when in that time in Europe, it's not that you're going to go to college and create a better future for yourself. If you was a goat herder, you're going to go from long generations of that. It was never a social mobility at that time. This was the biggest social mobility that many people in the working class in Europe took as a voyage. So with that being said, them being in a new land, the Columbus brothers were not great leaders, and Roldán, he created a rebellion where he mobilized all the Spaniards, the rest of the Spaniards in the island. With this political instability in the island already, it created more political instability in terms of trying where the king and the queen will bring as a governor and how they were expanding. All right, and while they were expanding, they also discovered new lands in this side of the world. I don't like to call it the New World because the world has been there way before the Europeans came to this side of the world. So by 1519 to 1533, many of the Tainos were still there, and they were still fighting. Many of the caciques, even though their population was decreasing a lot, and Enriquillo was a Taino cacique who rebelled against the Spaniards because they were disorganized. And he was so great in mobilizing recently captured Africans that were forced into the Dominican Republic. He was able to mobilize with many of them that were cimarrones and fight against the Spanish and obtain land. So Enriquillo is a person that we spoke in in part one of the way he was able to organize and get land, right? And his land is still there. He's known as a hero in the Dominican Republic. Another major aspect that we spoke about in the last session was at 1684, the Treaty of Restebon, which was it was signed by the European powers that put an end to piracy, and France became the sole victor of the Tortuga Island. Remember the Tortuga Island on the side that we spoke about how all the European empires started coming into that island. Even though all the islands have different, there were so many islands to go into, they saw that the island of, it was the original name is Haiti, and then they put it, the European conquered, they put it as Hispaniola. They saw that this was a prime place to get more money. And also, if you're making money for some reason, human nature, they always like to hate. You can never make money with peace. They'd be like, yeah, we want that island. There's so many islands at this time, but everybody came to this island. And in 1684, they put an end to piracy. And this also was the beginning where France got a side of the Blue Island, which is right next to Haiti, modern day Haiti. So this was the beginning of the French being on the island. It was a little small part, with a lot of fighting between both European powers. By 1697, the Treaty of Resnick was given to the French. And now the island was officially split. And that split made Saint Dominique and Santo Domingo on the eastern side. So one was French and one was Spanish. Okay, so this was because a lot of wars happening in Europe, and the Treaty of Resnick gave, like I mentioned, gave it to the French because the French started taking power, right? And jumping into almost 100 years, in 100 years, the western side, which is Saint Dominique, became the most profitable colony all around the world, right? Is because they imported so many slaves and they had endless amount of work. During this time, in the eastern side, the Spanish saw other islands and lands that they went into. So the eastern side was very, very poor, and there was a sense where they took the Spanish crown and took it elsewhere. All right, so Puerto Rico started having a rise, Cuba started having a rise, Mexico, and Peru, where they found so much gold, the Spanish started going elsewhere. But on the western side of the island, which is Saint Dominique, became the most profitable at this time, right? With all those slaves and mixtures that happened in the island, by 1791, the Haitian Revolution began, right? Do you guys know the main leader of the Haitian Revolution?
Toussaint Louverture.
Yes.
So, and I call him General Toussaint because he started in the military and rose his way up. He was they call him his father was a French. He was a mixed. So he had a lot of privileges, but he also was known. If you guys know in the first book club when I described all the different phrases for and social classes for anybody that was of color in the island. So you have many of the mixed people on the island that thought they owned slaves as well, and they had a whole different type of lifestyle. And you had people that were always going to be slaves, and the recently immigrated slaves, the recently taken slaves to the island. They couldn't find a way to work together. but General Toussaint brought them together, and he started the Haitian Revolution, which started in 1791. 4 years later, by 1795, the Treaty of Basel, which Spain gave its portion of the Hispaniola to France. This made it easy for independence later on for Haiti. So 1795. Later on, when we talk about 1822, it made it easier for Haiti to come into the island and create those 22 years of Haitian rule in the Dominican Republic. All right. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I'm just rambling. I'm just trying to give you guys a recap. You guys are with me?
Yep.
Okay, I see one head nod. Okay, great.
Yep.
So by 1802, Dessalines succeeds power after the death of Toussaint, and Dessalines was another general. He was a warrior. He was a lot more ruthless than Toussaint. And by 1802, that same year, Napoleon, the French emperor, invades the eastern part of the island to retake the whole island. Okay, so there was a lot of back and forth. And they knew that this island was very important into the French, as well as they've noticed that they was getting worldwide, people looked down upon the French, even though the French they had New Orleans and they had a lot of different colonies. It was kind of embarrassing to them that slaves were able to create this revolution. So by 1804, the Haitian independence against France succeeded. And this was an eye-opening experience, which throughout the world, eye-opening experience to people of African descent, because now they saw somebody really took over, somebody was able to move forward, and that created a change in terms of slavery on this side of the world, okay? But that also created the whole world coming down on Haiti, right? I always say, even till now, everything that's happening in Haiti, it all stems from 1804. Because when they got their independence and to get recognition, it was all because they agreed into a loan, as well as the US placed sanctions and an embargo. So being the most profitable colony at this time and being sanctioned, it made it possible for this for the Western side to really grow. All right, so on January 1st, 1804, the Haitian independence succeeded, and it became Haiti. Why did they name it Haiti after Saint Dominique? Good question.
I have a guess. I'm not too sure, but
That's
it's the natives used to call it Haiti, and they went back to what the natives used to call the land.
Absolutely. See, you're paying attention. Very good, Santana. Does anybody have any questions so far? No? And so going on to 1804, and by 1808, the Spanish retake. Spain comes back to try to retake Santo Domingo following a revolt by the Spanish criollos. Criollos in English, in the book, they also say Creoles, but criollos means they were Spanish, but they were born in the Dominican Republic. So with generations, they became Dominican. So the Spanish tried to come back to regain. This is 1804. So there was a great period after 1795 of that Treaty of Basel to 1822. It was a very big, great period in the Dominican Republic. All right. The reason why Dominican Republic was able to build its own little culture, subculture, is because remember they were left alone for 100 years. So now slavery was always harsh everywhere, but now it became less harsh. People started mixing. Rooster fighting became a thing. People started. They have a document in a book called The Dominican People by Noah Saga, where a French explorer, I call him colonizer. A French colonizer said, hey, look at these people in the eastern side. They drink, and they ride horses with their slaves. That's kind of shameful. But it's just because the mixing and they had to fend for themselves. Things started being a lot more relaxed. On the western side, if you were Black, it was very intense. All right. I say this because when everything comes together, there's two cultures that don't really understand it's gonna clash. You guys get me so far? So by 1821, an uprising against the Spanish followed by a brief period of independence. All right, this established short-lived independence was the Republic of Spanish Haiti by Cáceres. This was only 3 months, but this Cáceres, he did not have the backing of any army. He didn't have any backing of the people. He just had this idea. He was a writer and he just put it out there. The Haitian president at that time, Boyer, marched with his troops into Santo Domingo and connected the island. Remember, there was not a lot of support on this side. As well as if you were a Black, I always try to tell my class, put yourself in at this time. If you are always put down by a set of people, all right, and if you were a Afro-Dominican working and you've been enslaved, you're gonna be like, hey, if a guy that looks like he on a horse and he tells your master to get out the way, you're gonna be like, hell yeah, I wanna go with that guy. So it made it easier when 1822 came around to reconnect. All right, so ideology, a lot of people were for it. So the thing is that when they came together, there was an issue. There was a lot of changes of culture, and there was a lot of forced items that the Haitian government wanted to impose. So what I always give an analogy of two people meeting each other. Sure, they think each other are, they both think they're great, and they're like, hey, let's just move in together. But you know, you really like this person, but it's not gonna work because maybe one person has too much debt, like the loan that they have with France, and the other person likes to go out a little bit more, have a chill vibe. And when you put that together and you be like, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that, I live my life like this, it start clashing, and you say, hey, we're very different culturally, we're very different, and you start seeing that. So by 1838, Juan Pablo Duarte helped to organize a secret society called La Trinitaria. Okay, so and at this time there were 4 different ways that the Dominican people wanted to go. You have 4 different separatist groups. I mentioned it last time in the class, but you know, I don't feel like you guys remember that because that was kind of quick. So I'll just ramble and say it. So the first separatist group was the pro-Spanish group, that they wanted to go back with Spain. So these were the elites, all right? The elites were like, hey, we're Spanish, let's go with Spain. Let the Spanish come over here and protect us, because it was also about protection. The second group wanted to be pro-French, which they wanted to connect with France, but for Haiti, how do you think they felt? They just beat French. They're like, you can't do that. You're not gonna bring the French to the eastern side and us be cool there. So in the Dominican Republic, they also have a pro-French group. You had a group that wanted to total independence, which is like the Trinitaria, did not want to be with anyone. All right, so that's where the idea of being by themselves is like the Trinitaria. And then you had a group that was okay with the current government. All right, so there was a lot of changes, but in 1838, Duarte really made the people, many of the people that were there, see the vision of total independence. So by 1844, which is what the independence happened. That's the Dominican. That's another day. What's the day of independence?
February 27th.
Santana. That's it. I'm gonna have to leave her.
It
yes.
wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't say it.
It wasn't you? No.
It was Salita.
Okay. I'm sorry. You guys sounded the same to me right now. But thank you, Salita. So February 27th, 1844, Haiti was overthrown by the Trinitarios, which was with Duarte, Sanchez, and Neja, as well as with the help of Pedro Santana. Remember, all the new presidents, we're going to go, now we're heading into the second part of the book, where you're going to see the common denominators that if you do not have guns and people, it's going to be hard for you to maintain an administration. All right. It's not like now that you got to have all these wits and smarts and connections and relationships. Like, you have at least 20 people with you and you got some guns, you could possibly be president and have connections. All right. So Pedro Santana helped, Pedro and his brother Ramon helped in terms of getting the Dominican Republic their independence in 1844. All right, but there was a problem. All right, so we're gonna go into the second part, which goes into Santana's proclamation. And what happened right after this with the Trinitarios and Santana?
That whole part to me was crazy. I didn't know those details. I've always learned about, the founding fathers. I just assumed there had been like complete reverence of them all this time. Santana is a fool. Like, whoa, I was not ready for all the shenanigans. With like trying to say they were, conspirators, exiling folks. I mean, even, his finance minister, his brother, the priest, I was like, yo, Santana is wild.
He was a wild boy. You know what? It's like every movie, right? The Dominican story it's like a soap opera. All right. Have you ever seen Paid in Full? Santana is like Rico. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I know that shows I'm very New York. Or where's a character that's like really betrayed everybody, but you thought that was your friend? That's what Santana did. So Santana really represented the elite.
He's like Tupac's character in Juice. I can't believe I can't remember his name
exactly.
right now. That's him.
He's Bishop. And so basically he had the same, he wanted to help, of course, but the whole time they were fighting, he had a different objective. And the objective of one of the separatist groups that was pro-Spanish, right? And I knew I left out one of the separatist groups, which was the one that wanted the French
No, you mentioned them.
Not the French, the British.
Oh.
But the British had no interest. So Santana, his proclamation was by 1861 to basically get the Spanish and be part of the Spanish crown. And he wanted the Spanish to really take over and be the main, not take over as a colony, but to be a province of Spain. So he wanted to have not to be under them, but the Spanish had different objectives. And we're gonna get into that with this chapter, all right? I just wanted to discuss a little bit of the Trinitarios because they're a very important force, even though they had a short period. I wanted the importance of why they remember, all right? And Juan Pablo Duarte, Francisco de Rosario Sanchez, and Matias Ramon Mella, their whole thing was to encourage independence. When somebody puts that in your brain, it opens up your mind. So for the next few years, there's going to be folks trying to sell the Dominican Republic to the U.S., to different parts, but the person in their mind will say, hey, we wanted total independence was the Trinitarios, okay? All right, so that's why Juan Pablo Duarte and Rosario Sanchez and Ramon Mella are highly important. And those are the top three. Of course, there's a lot of people that were part of the Trinitarios, okay? Does anybody have any questions?
So I just kind of wanted independence, right? Or shortly after. And then this dude, he wanted the country to be like a province of Spain and was like representing the elites. He was not of the Trinitarios though, was he? Okay.
From with the battle. So Santana was a known, he was a great military man. Of course, he became the first president, but he was considered a great military strategist. He was a key successful figure in terms of different battles. And he had guns and he had people. And that's something that was important. Ureña, Dunbar.
You just say Salita, like Sala Pequeña, Salita. So, but the other thing with Santana and his brother, like they were sort of a part of that whole collaboration that the Trinitarios did to purpose, like they knew they needed more folks. And so they try to get that more conservative wing. They start talking to them in Santo Domingo, and they needed to build in more people to make this happen. They knew they had the competition, particularly with like the pro-France group that was trying to go ahead and do their little coup thing that was coming up, like supposed to be in March. So they had to get ahead of, no, maybe April. They had to get ahead of that. So they needed like more folks. So they bring in these, rich guys that have these resources, the military expertise, but I mean, talk about a Trojan horse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's and you're gonna start seeing a lot of betrayal politics. This is politics, but Dominican politics is another beast, and it starts from there because Santana being number one. So Santana's proclamation in 1861 was basically he wanted to explain his next political move in the direction of the Dominican Republic, and he explained that basically he wanted the opportunity to be part of Spain again. All right. The Dominican Republic soldiers and people were very tired of war, and he thought that they needed protection. All right. He had a lot of doubts of just self-occupying the Dominican Republic. Like, can they really sustain themselves going forward? They were always worried about Haiti coming, in which there was a lot of different takeovers. And they were very worried about happening again. All right. So they say, hey, they always felt more Spanish, so they wanted to be a province, like a county of the Spanish Empire. But the Spanish had different plans, and that's where things get messy. And that's when you're gonna start seeing the new wave of leaders and ideology. So in this plan by 1861 and 1865, Santana announced to connect the Dominican Republic to Spain, but there was a lot of consequences. And one of the consequences is that the Spanish never looked at the criollos. The criollos are the Spaniards that were born and have generations in the island. So they have very different ways of seeing things. And with that being said, you also have, you speak Spanish a little different, you have different dialects, it's a whole different culture. So they never looked at them as the same. They never say, hey, now there's this racial tension where in the island for a long time, they owned a lot of land and they thought they were on the top. So now they became number two. And the Spaniards came in as number one. And many of the Dominicans that were in the island never wanted to connect to Spain. They had the same ideals of La Trinitaria, where being self-sufficient and figuring it out. All right. And one of the main reasons why they wanted to, the Dominican Republic wanted to separate from Haiti it wasn't a hatred of race, because Haiti helped them get rid of slavery. All right. But Haiti had a lot of debt and a lot of cultural issues that they didn't mesh. But the thing is that debt and really played a big part. When Spain came in with excessive amount of taxation, which already is playing the same part with Haiti, because Haiti they were taking a lot of taxes and they forced people to work. Now that's happening again with Spain. And if you were Black, you think the Spanish would say, hey, you guys have not been slaves, or there's new slaves. They're gonna look at you as a slave. So now, if you never worked in any plantation, now you're being forced. Just think about you getting out of slavery, and now you get a notice, you get an email saying, hey guys, slavery, and you see the subject says slavery incorporated says, hey, you need to get, you need to go back to the plantation. This is what's going on to many of the Dominicans at this time, and they did not like that. So so for the criollos being the top of the food chain at the social class, now you're number 2, now you're taking orders. So they already feel some type of way. The elites that try to cheat the dignitarios, now they feel, oh, I don't like this. They were not feeling the new Spanish colonization, even though it's called annexation. All right, and then people of color, most of the Africans, and there were still some Tainos, but many of them already kind of disappeared, being enslaved again, created a big problem. And then the restriction of trade, and they thought they were going to get a lot of benefits of the Spanish Empire. It never really happened. So this went into what happened next in the Dominican Republic. If you guys were reading the book. What happened?
We read it doesn't mean we remember anything.
What do you mean exactly? Like what happened?
After the destabilizing of the currency?
So this is all the issues that were going on when the Spanish came in. And people that were very, very angry about this, what did they do next? They revolted, right? And there was a big war. And the war was called the Dominican Restoration War. All right, it's called Restoration War because they wanted to restore what was going on in the Dominican Republic. All right, they wanted the majority of the people that they wanted an independent country, independent republic. Why did they put it out there? And the Dignitarios put it out there. So they fought against Santana. All right, so now Santana is on the Spanish side. All right, and the Dominican Republic had a bunch of leaders like Gregorio Luperón. Who knows who's Gregorio Luperón? You guys don't know who Gregorio Luperón?
Yes, I mean, he was the best, right, there you go. He's on the $20 bill, but he was one of the best leaders out of all of the ones we read.
Yes, he's actually, I hate to be biased, but he's actually my favorite. And he's done a lot of great things in the country, even though everybody has some flaws. We're going to discuss his flaws. But Gregorio Luperón was a general, the war hero here. And then you have, Ulysses Espaillat, which you see a lot of places named after him, as well as he is, the congressman, I think in New York, is a descendant of him. Gaspar Polanco, Pedro Antonio Pimentel. The people I have in red are people that became presidents later on. All right, so this is a formation. So some people believe, and most people and this is very controversial, I can't believe I'm saying this, and it'll be recorded, is that they feel like this is the real war for independence, okay? And we're gonna discuss why. So the Dominican Restoration War was a guerrilla war between 1863 and 1865, and it was it's the war in the Dominican Republic. It was the nationalists, so people that felt they were Dominican, against the Spanish, all right, who recolonized the country after 17 years of independence. The Dominican Republic is the only country that got rid of their colonizer and said, hey guys, why don't you come back? We miss you. It's kind of crazy, So this is why we have identity issues, because we don't know. It's a lot of like hiccups and back and forth, and we had a short stint with the British that came in with Sir Drake in that great area where he was in the capital. So this is why you have so many different last names with British last names in the Dominican Republic. And it's something I want to talk about, the different ethnicities that are in the island. So Haiti also saw this as a threat to the whole entire island, having the Spanish right next to free Black Republic. So Haiti quickly helped the Dominican Republic. Hey, you guys are fighting them, we'll fight them with you. So they also gave the Dominican Republic guns, and also gave manpower and shelter, because they had to go back and forth. all right? Because they saw it as a threat. Also, Haiti was very anti-slavery. Everybody going through slavery, Haiti definitely came to their rescue, all right? Some people don't know that Haiti also helped out La Gran Colombia. Who knew that? With Simon Bolivar. Okay. Haiti also helped out just different islands, and it's because they were anti-slavery. Now, how can they live knowing that there's slavery right next door? So Haiti helped out in this restoration. Does anybody have any questions?
I have some observations that I want us to point out.
Yes.
And that is that when you're studying this history now, the short ad lib may lead people to think that these were racially motivated, but the economics of the land played a big role. In our country in and of itself was divided between the North and the South, in how each of the people were making their money and feeding their families. So I think that it is important to note that the economics played a big role. The country was economically destabilized. People were printing money left and right just to be able to afford whatever they wanted to. And that was a disorganized system that was not trickling down to the average person. Therefore, the average people were frustrated with these governments, and that's why they were joining to overthrow the governments that were existing.
Yeah, and this is going to happen after the Restoration War. You're going to start seeing political parties develop, and you're going to start seeing the difference between the Cibaeños and the people from the capital. You still see it, and I'm not a Cibaeño. Well, generations down the line, my family's from La Vega and up there, but I don't consider myself a Cibaeño. Cibaeños have in their DNA. I'll give this to them: entrepreneurship to the max, and family. This kind of family business value, and it comes from all the way from this time. It's in their DNA. So if you see them coming into the Dominican in New York, bodega, and they got their cousins in there. It's like back in the day, that's how they were doing it. And we're going to talk about those characteristics and how it still shapes us. Okay. And that's one of the things that I said earlier when I got to get you guys that book. In the Dominican people, when the French colonizer went to the Spanish side, and he said, look at the Spanish criollos drinking outside with their slaves and listening to music. If you go to the capital now, that's what you see. People drinking outside with the music. And I say, look, it's just everything trickles down. And it's like in our DNA, it's like culture things started happening. I think rooster fights. This was a thing that was happening at this time. Nobody has ever seen that, you know? So a lot of things it just started forming.
Siempre no ha gustado el can.
So the can happened a long time ago. So that 100 years of being by ourselves kind of shaped like Dominican culture from the beginning. And it became a national pride in terms of how they move, because it's kind of hard to understand Dominican culture if you don't understand it, right? And I told this to people, it's just because it was 100 years by itself, and it was a lot of different cultures, a lot of mixing, and a lot of different things coming in and out. But we're gonna get into that because the Restoration War is important. Okay, who's excited to learn about the Restoration War?
Me.
So the Dominican Republic, on their side, they didn't have that many troops. Okay, so we want to regard that Haiti helped out a lot in this Restoration War, but we also had other partners that helped out in this war, which is Puerto Rico helped out in this war, and Cuba. All right, they didn't have a lot of troops to fight. They only had like about 17,000 estimate. The Spanish had 63,000, including Pedro Santana. So they were ready to like retake, and if they would have won this war, it would have been really bad for the future of the Dominican Republic, all right? But thank God, Guerrilla, he was about that life, and he was able to move us forward, okay? So post-Restoration War, Ingenio María de Jesús, Ingenio María de Hostos, he recognized this as the real war of independence of the Dominican people. And he says that is because because in 1844 it was more like a coup carried out by the elites, and the Restoration War was a struggle that cut through class, it cut through racial lines, and many other people that fought that same struggle under the Spanish, like Cuba and Puerto Rico, really helped out in terms of fighting through. Okay, so the Restoration War also led to different things happening at this time. All right, so Hostos, which they have a college named after him because of his way of thinking of la unión hace la fuerza, our us coming together is more strength. All right, which is, that phrase is actually was written in Creole in the Haitian flag. Nuestra unión hace la fuerza, which is our union creates our strength, is something that went down from the Restoration. So the Dominican Republic, fighting through the Spanish in 1865, got rid of them. Then they got help from Puerto Rico. And then 3 years later, Puerto Rico saw it and they said, hey, we can do the same thing. So Los Gritos de Lares in Puerto Rico was in 1868, okay? And they were able to fight through that, all right? This only had like 1 or 2 pages, but I always try to point that out in terms of how connected the islands are to each other, right? Because I know when people migrate to the US, there's always differences, but back home, we're seen as brothers and sisters. Especially I just came back from Santo Domingo. They have a lot of street renamed after Puerto Rican leaders and Cuban leaders, all right? So after Los Gritos de Lares, then the 10-year war in Cuba happened, right? And this was a major war because the Americans came into it as well, all right? So the Restoration War really set the tone in the Caribbean to get rid of the Spanish. Does anybody have any questions? No. Okay. I get excited about this topic, right? So it's a time of revolution. I like revolutions and how the Spanish thought that they can continue doing this. So during this time, you have the Dominicans fighting through, you have Puerto Rico, Cuba, you have Simón Bolivar. So there's a lot of independence happening against the Spanish. Remember, the Spanish was at one time the most powerful, they had the most colonies, and then it started trickling down and going down the drain, okay? So the new Dominicanidad started occurring. So after 1865 to 1899, a lot of political parties started happening, okay? And, politics started building, and you started seeing a big rivalries between different folks. So we're gonna go into Bias and Santana, their beef, and also their outlook and USA statehood, right? I know, I feel, who's gotten to that chapter where the Dominican Republic almost became a state? No, it's crazy.
Is it like the one with when they're like a protectorate or something?
Yeah, but then they voted it into Senate, and the only person that didn't vote, they missed it by 1 vote.
Really?
And, and that almost was, to eradicate that right now, they would not have been the same Dominican Republic. So it's something that most people don't talk about too much, but it's exciting to know.
I think it gets a mention in like global history class in high school one day, and we would have almost been Puerto Rico because this was before Puerto Rico became
yeah. Yeah, so
that's interesting. I've always heard about Cuba. I've never heard that about the DR. Like everyone knows that like Cuba was almost a state in the US.
Yep.
But this is new. I can't wait to get to this chapter.
Yeah, so that's and that's the reason about the 10 years war that happened. So when they saw when the Americans saw that that it's not happening, they looked at the Dominican Republic, but it was the Dominican leaders, well, Bias, that wanted that. So we're gonna get into that, but let me get into the politics that started brewing between the Dominican leaders and all the rivalries, because it's gonna talk about bias, and we're gonna go straight into that. Right? So many of the Dominican leaders knew that the way to obtain power is personal connection, financial stability, and regional location, but as well as having a strong army behind you. All right. So there were two big political parties that were developed at this time, and it was the Red Party and the Blue Party, and a short-lived Green Party. All right. The Blue Party was more based on the North. So when you talk about the North, you talk about Cibao, Puerto Plata, you talk about the tobacco industry, all right? If you guys know how important the tobacco industry was, at this time, tobacco was king. So you had a kingmaker, I call him a kingmaker, Francisco Bono, which was if you wanted to be president and you needed money or you needed, the resources, you talk to that man right there. So the Blue Party was made out of Gregorio Luperón, and the Red Party, you have Buenaventura Baez. I always thought his name was so cool, Buenaventura. You know what I mean? You just come up, you go over like, hey, what's up? What's your name? My name is Buenaventura. You know? Who came up with that name? Just chiming in my opinions there. So the Blue Party was a very liberal. The Blue Party was more center-left, and the Red Party was more right-wing. Okay, so the capital was very right-wing, and you're gonna start seeing later on that they started putting sugar refineries and things of that nature. So you're gonna start seeing the differences in terms of the formation of the people, where people in the South will work for people. You go and apply for a job, you ask for a job. In the North, if you have your farm, you have tobacco, your whole family eats, you have a different mentality. All right, so you start seeing the disparity of wealth as well as and family formation in the North, and you start seeing the formation of the South, which is the capital. Okay, and to this day, you see they speak differently, different accents, even though they're the same country. Okay, so at this time, President Baez proposed a scheme to connect the U.S. to the Dominican Republic in 1870. All right, the Americans asked, was the majority of the Dominican people, were they in favor of this? And he straight up lied, like, yeah, this is what we want. All right, remember the Restoration, the first, the Trinitaria in 1844, total independence. This is what we want. Great. Then we go to the Restoration War. Hey, you fight for total independence. Now this new president had a different way of seeing things, and he always was more worried about, can the country really survive on its own? So they put it on a chopping block for the U.S., where the Dominican Republic, it was mentioned that they would get protection from invaders. Okay, invaders, when they think about invaders, they're thinking about Haiti, and they're thinking about the Spanish. Right? And they also, that war, the Restoration War, killed the entire economy in the Dominican Republic. Right? And with this deal, their debts will be paid for and settled. Right? As well as they will give them an immediate shipment of $100,000 in cash. $100,000 at that time, it was a lot of money. Okay? And also will give more power, armed power, more guns to Baez while he's in power. All right, so Baez saw this kind of selfishly, but the reason why this didn't happen is because President Horace Grant, when he was a senator, did not vote for it. He mentions that as his biggest regret. Right? So if this would never happen, we would not have bachata. You know what I mean? It would have been over for that. If your name is Miguel, your name would have been Michael. If your name, you guys get where I'm going, right? Everything would have been very different.
I mean, would it happen though? Because like Puerto Rico still existed, so we probably still would have had our flavor.
Yeah, but it was more But
It was more like incorporated in the country, right? Like not just like a.
So the Jones Act for Puerto Rico is more complicated because it's a commonwealth, so we kind of get here there. Now, if you're a state, it's like you can't. The Dominicans will kind of lose all their. You can't have your own president. I mean, well,
Yeah.
it's like you lose.
Then I'll make the argument that it's more like Hawaii then. Boom.
More
My argument still
Hawaii.
stands.
And then you have the native people fighting right now, like for their culture, but people don't know a lot of what's going on there. So it would have been like Hawaii, but this is 100 years before Hawaii. So this is like the first idea of like, hey, let's bring an extra state that's not here. You know, it's outside of, you know, because they wanted to, they really was going after the resources. Okay.
I think that timing plays a role because you can consider the country as being a baby in its infancy. So had it been acquired back then, a lot of the things that we developed along the way would not have been developed in that way.
No, it would have been. Yeah. So, and also political parties were being developed now. The ways of thinking was changing. So after Baez and a few stints of different presidents, because they saw that Baez didn't have the right ideology and they almost lost the Dominican Republic. And if that would have been on paper, it would have been hard to be like, hey, I don't want to be a state anymore. That probably would have never happened. So then Luperón saw the instability of politics playing a part, which if it's unstable politically, it will be it would not be stable financially and economically because there's a change and there was a lot of people going after each other every single year. In the Dominican Republic. For some reason, everybody wants to be president in this time here, right? So Luperón, he was a successful businessman. He was doing his thing. He had the respect of everybody. When they asked him, hey, would you want to be president? He's like, no, I'm not interested. I'm great. Thank you so much. He always curved them. But then he was the leader of the Blue Party. He said, you know what? For stability in this country, I'm going to run for one term and then set the Blue Party up for stability. And when he did that and took that sacrifice, the Blue Party was in power for 20 years. All right. So the Blue Party dominated and set the tone in the Dominican Republic for the next few generations. What was the problem that happened with the Dominican Republic? Who was the demise of the Blue
Party? Lily, Ulysses Horo.
Yes, and what did he do that messed up the country's potential future?
Wasn't he like trying to get the Rojos kind of involved and sort of like destabilizing politics overall that way?
Yeah, well,
wasn't it the Samaná thing?
That was something that was purchased. That was a plan that did with. He was selling money. Spoke to him. So remember, the people from Samaná are people from Mississippi, African Americans that they sent over there. And you know, I don't know if you know about the basketball player Trevor Ariza. He is from Samaná. He's also, you know, he carries himself as an African American, being descendant. But that was part of that deal. But Lilis, he set the country back. It was probably the main reason why the Americans came in the 1900s. All right. So just to get it in, I know I'm jumping, like fast forwarding it. So the political instability, the reason why Luperón decided, hey, why not? Let me just get in here and help. All right. So when Baez took over the Red Party, and then after was Espaillat in 1976, the country in 3 years, 1876 to 1879, because Luperón came in 1879, it went from Green Party, which was Gonzalez, then Guillermo, then another person that was in Castro, he was independent, then Guillermo was from the Red Party, and then Luperón said, ya está bueno, I'm the real leader here. He was loved by everybody, but he also set the Blue Party up to be a powerhouse. And this is where you start seeing the economy also grow in the right direction in the Dominican Republic, right? So Luperón had also created a way, because people were killing each other for power in the Dominican Republic at this time. And while they're killing each other for power, he said, you know what, let me just create a new rule. Our presidential terms now is going to be for 2 years. For 2 years, and then it gives opportunity for everybody in the blue party to really take control and have an opportunity to be president. All right. So Luperón took the government from Puerto Plata. Usually it's from the capital, where he's from Puerto Plata. If you know, he has a province named after him because he was so loved. And he appointed his longtime assistant, Ulysses Hero, as Minister of War, to handle all his political matters in Santo Domingo. All right. To me, I look at Lilis being recorded. I forgot. I can't be. I'm a little ratchet with this. I look at him as. You guys ever seen Chappelle? The show. Chappelle. The Chappelle show.
Oh yeah.
Lilis was like Rick James, right? Because he knew that Luperón really loved him almost like a son, so he could get away with anything. And this was Luperón's flaw. So when he saw that Lilis was playing himself and doing a lot of side deals, he let him slide until it was too late. Okay, Luperón was a very successful person. He had his own credit company, this, that. He was doing a lot of great things. Even his administration installed free press. We take that for granted here, because we got all the internet. But now he put free press. He wanted to educate the public. He wanted to put schools everywhere. He wanted to make sure the government was transparent. But he also welcomed many Cubans and Puerto Ricanos as immigrants from the Dominican Republic as refuge from a way to be away from the empire. He did a lot of great things, even postal services in different areas. But when he came in, he wanted to be president all this time, that he created election fraud. And him creating, well, let me just go and say that the way he schemed, you should be like, wow, this guy is different. When Luperón literally took the first person he wanted to make sure that was in power, and he took him right after him, was the Blue Party selected, wow, I just forgot the father's name because I'm doing this off the dome. Father Fernando Arturo Merino. So his first endorsement right after Luperón, he said, hey, I'm gonna put Fernando, Father de Merino, to be the next president for 2 years. So everybody can have an opportunity, and then people don't have to kill themselves to have the power, okay? He finished that term. Luperón and Lilis had their minds for the next candidates, which were two different people. Luperón wanted to be De Moya, and Lilis wanted to be Gregorio Vigini, with the hopes of Vigini stepping down and he becomes president. He was already scheming as, hey, I'm gonna be your vice president, and find a way to tamper with the elections, and then boom, he's in. All right, so Lilis tampered with the election to see his candidate win by adding about 1,500 more votes. And many of the Moya supporters saw this, and they knew that he cheated, but Luperón left it alone because he didn't want a war between the same party for war. All right, so this is like the first red flag. He wanted to prevent a civil war, and he said he let Lilis slide. All right, so at this time, Vigini soon resigned and let Lilis take over as president, while Luperón was away in Europe. And everybody knew he created an election fraud. So this created tension between the party, okay? Because majority of the country wanted Moya to be the president. So after the term ended, the 2 years, they held a new election. Now Lili would be on the ticket, as well as De Moya, all right? And he's like, look, I'm gonna beat this guy. Yeah, Lili's won by tampering with the Moya supporters, but he found a way. And this is where when we say money talks, money changes you. You know, more money, more problems. Moya and his supporters rebelled against Lili and they fought and everything. But Lili found out that if I pay these guys, I could take his supporters. And that's what he did. So when he started seeing that he could get money, he literally, from the same party, he literally took his supporters. So he bought out his rebels, he bought out his support, and Lili's won again. So many people that supported while he took his presidency, Moya's people left the country and pillaged many properties in La Vega and Cibao, because he said he wanted to demonstrate his power and set an example of anybody that opposed his presidency. This is like the official first dictator of the Dominican Republic, okay? While Luperon's mission in this whole time to get the countries to be stable for once, Lili's just literally just put that on the ground. And now political tension has arrived again in the Dominican Republic. And the Blue Party has become the only party, okay? Remember, the Blue Party was supported by the tobacco interests. And when I say this, the tobacco, anybody that had tobacco land at that time, they were powerful. Sometimes a little bit more powerful than the president, all right? Because how did the story end for Lili?
Oh, he gets assassinated.
He gets assassinated in broad daylight in Mocha, right?
By like some young guy, right?
Right, a young guy. So with that being,
Jacobito. His name was Jacobito, the one that assassinated.
yes. So yeah, it's funny because my grandfather, Mr. Santana in DR, he just talks about him like he knew him. I was like, okay, I gotta go. But right now, you start seeing tension between the capital and after his assassinated and the Cibao region, because now the president is assassinated because the president was doing what? Taking money from everybody. So the one thing about Lili is that he took loans from Europe, right? But he never intended to pay that off. He took loans, he started buying houses and supporting his supporters. So once he started giving them money, he had to keep that going. All right. So it's like a Ponzi scheme. He takes more money here and he just passes it around the Dominican Republic. But when he started running out of money, as the president, he started taking money from the US. He started taking money from, not the US, a New York Wall Street bank. All right. Believe it or not, at one time, the Dominican Republic would have been owned by a bank because Lili took so much money. So at this time, people playing hot potato with the Dominican Republic. Buyers wanted to make it a state, and then you got Lili just taking money to make sure that he could stay in power. All right, and he took out so much money that he even started taking so much money from the tobacco merchants that when nobody wanted to lend him anything, he started creating what? Papeletas de Lili. The disrespect when you say, I'm gonna pay you back, and then you see his face on it. So, yes.
I just wanted to say I liked this part of it because it reminded me a lot of the debt situation in Puerto Rico right now. Kind of, there was, just all the bit where, lending money and issuing bonds and borrowing money and this whole Ponzi scheme of like, let me borrow some more to pay off the interest and borrow some more. And even like the same kinds of banks, these like New York banks and Wall Street banks that are owning the Puerto Rican debt, and like the politicians, a lot of them using it kind of for their own political gain. And reading this part just reminded me of that, like a different, like 100 years before, but so similar, in my opinion, at least.
No, a lot of things was happening at this time and in the different islands, because this is like the first out of the Spanish colonies in the Caribbean. It's the one that's had the independence first. So a lot of people in the Dominican Republic, they have ancestry from different parts of the world, different parts of the Caribbean. Like even the people from San Pedro de Macorís, they have many lineages from British colonies. But the dictatorship, just to get back to the dictatorship of Lili, which was from 1886 to 1899, is because he did some good things. and he used some of the money to put electricity in Santo Domingo, to build a bridge between Santiago and Puerto Plata. But he put so much money that this is the end result was to bankrupt the country. And him bankrupting the country, remember when they had beef with Haiti because they didn't want to owe anybody anything. They didn't want to be in debt and blah, 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 right? And they didn't want to be, all their taxes to one country. Lily even took out secret loans from a Wall Street bank that the US government had to get in. And you know what they said? We got you now. You want to be a state, but now we got you in a different way. Because if you become a state, you had some rights. So now they came in the backside. And the other side now is that we own you now. It's like in that movie, Menace to Society, you messed up now. So the same issue that Haiti had 100 years that they were trying not to be part of, this is happening now in DR. Even worse because they had no entry. The president just got killed. And then everywhere you look, you have ships from German ships and Italian ships coming to the Dominican Republic, trying to collect. So this really created a lot of turmoil on this side of the world because right now, US interest was to have this side of the world, okay? Remember, the Panama Canal and all that, the Americans wanted this side for themselves. So they made a deal with the European powers and said, hey, we'll pay this off, but this loan is gonna be straight with the Americans. So this created the opportunity later on for the Americans to come in as, the US to come in as an intervention, to intervene the Dominican Republic in 1914. Got it again. I'm saying this off the top of my head. 1924. 1916 and 1924. Okay? So for a long time, because of Lily's mess and a lot of things happening politically, now the Dominican Republic fell into debt and under somebody. All right? Remember, they were totally free. And now they fall into this. Does anybody have any questions before I go into the new era? No? Hope you guys are following me. I feel like I'm durmiendo así.
We're following.
Okay. So I say in the next slide, I call it Ay que vaina. That means for my non-Spanish speaker, damn, because now the DR is bankrupt and they got a lot of foreign debt. And at one time they owed many countries that were collecting. They were coming in warships and collecting, all right? And say, hey, where's our money? And now that president that took those secret loans is not alive. And people are like, what money are you talking about? So this is very frightening for the people. So they had to restructure the political, everything that was happening politically in the Dominican Republic. And the US had intervened in terms of, hey, we could work out a loan situation. But I always found it very savvy how the Americans were able to be like, hey, we got you now. Basically, they got their way, all right?
Remy, we can only see half of the slide. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Because I'm trying to look at, I could see you guys. I'm looking at you guys. Let's see. All right. Is everybody listening in?
Yes.
Fantastic. So by the early 1900s, you had different political parties. You can't see anything?
Mm.
Can you see it now?
I can see it.
I
think it's Princesa who said she couldn't see.
Princesa, can you?
I think she left. She just left. She might have hit the wrong button or.
Okay. Let me just put it as full. It's because when people try to come in, I have to control it. I'm pretty sure you guys can see better now. Not this. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
All right. So the political instability, uncertainty happened, and then the red party and the blue party are scrambling to see what's their new leader, but also trying to figure out how are they trying to fix their financial agreements. So the 1900s, the reason why this time period is so important is because this frames the mind of what we have Trujillo. All right, all this back and forth with all these different countries, and the Dominican Republic being picked on, really shapes the mind of the young Dominicans that come in later on, right? So that's why Trujillo was really nationalistic. Like, either you're Dominican or no me hable. Don't talk to me, you know? So when the Europeans came in and they backed a lot of the loans that Lilies put out there, the Dominican Republic lost 50% of their custom revenues. They had to send it to the New York bank, and 45% was for them to really govern their government, and 5% was just to pay their employees, their government employees, and just excessive amount of taxes, all right, to the U.S. So they would, if they had these interest rates and everything, they were not going to be able to pay these loans out on ever. They would have been stuck in this loan. Right? And it's important to understand that people, they felt really stuck. So the U.S. wanted to, as well as control them, to say, hey, one of their agreements to fix the economy, you have to attract foreign investors globally to build this economy. So that means now people are buying in to the Dominican Republic. That didn't make anybody, landowners and independents, was all out the table. All right. So now you have you have French people coming in, you have investors coming in from everywhere. All right. And then the modification of the Constitution was implemented at this time period as well, where presidential terms was set to 6 years, and they eliminated the vice presidents because there was a lot of back and forth fighting. All right. Because we're going to talk about this Dominican Civil War because of the assassination of Ramon Caceres, was part of the Red Party. Okay? And it's because everybody that wants political power at this time, they didn't just wait for your term to end. They just say, hey, I'm just going to take it. And it's still, for some reason, politics is still kind of dirty in the DR. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So a lot of the agricultural sector had to be grown back, and they did not put as much importance to the sector at this time as the time of Haiti. So now, remember when they were the Haiti, Haiti was basically said, hey, let's work together and let's free each other. And the Dominicans was like, hey, that's your loan, that's not our problem. But now they're in the same boat. And this is like the irony of history. That's why it's good to know your history. And so now Haiti has a lot of loan, and they have their own mess. And now the Dominican Republic has their own mess with the Americans, which is right there, their neighbor. So the neighbor really controlled a lot of their agricultural exemptions and how they made money, okay? And as well as the folks that were buying into the country. So a lot of those investors, what made it attractive to them is that they didn't have to pay taxes. The taxes were being paid by native Dominicans. That made them very angry as well. So we had two presidential figures at this time, Juan Isidro Jimenez, which was a member of the Blue Party. So he's back and forth with the American occupation. So he came in 1899. But you also have Horacio Vasquez. Horacio Vasquez was very important because he's the one that gave Trujillo his start, okay? And Trujillo's uncle worked for him. So that's when he started seeing about investing and learning, because Trujillo grew up very, very poor. He was a street kid, but he was able to understand politics because of Vasquez. All right, so Jimenez and Vasquez, they were rivals for a very long time. And after the U.S. occupation and the military forces, in 1916 to 1924, Vasquez was elected as president to the 1930, right? Because in 1930, Trujillo came in and just took over, right? I'm just trying to give you this background thing before we get to Trujillo. But Trujillo, Vasquez urged for anybody that was Dominican exile or anybody from Dominican descent to come back to the island. He wanted to really rebuild the country. The dollar, the Dominican peso was close to the dollar by 5 pesos, and he wanted to fix the finances and getting rid of lily paper that was still in circulation. You have some campos still trying to pay you in lily paper, and that's not gonna work. Imagine you working all day and somebody pay you in lily paper. You just be like, I don't want to work here anymore. So the red party and the blue party, once Trujillo took over, once he took over in 1930, a lot of the political parties were kind of dissolved, and Trujillo really he put in the focus to his own. I want to talk a little bit about his formation, but this Dominican Civil War, it was only for 1 year, 1911 to 1912. Really set the tone of why the Americans came in. And why do you think that the Americans came in right after the Civil War?
To make sure they got their money paid.
Yeah, they were like, if you guys are fighting all day, how are you gonna pay us our money? So the Americans came in, and the influence changed the Dominican Republic's history right after this. Okay.
And didn't they also want Trujillo to take over because they thought that Trujillo had been trained with the American army? So they thought that somebody like that would keep the order closer to what the US wanted.
So the US liked Trujillo. Trujillo was young, but a lot of people wasn't for Trujillo when the election came around. They thought that he was, so Trujillo was a tigre. Everybody knows what tigre means, right? So when the Americans allowed him to move up the ladder and having that connection to Vasquez and his uncle Plito, he learned how to invest his money, but he was a tigre where he was in charge of, so the DR had different armies everywhere, from the north to the south, to the west. Everybody had military groups, just groups for protection. The US put them together. They said, it's time for you guys to come together. And one of the main leaders when the national army became one was Trujillo, and he was very, very young. He became a captain, and then they made him the head of it, the head of the police. The thing is that when they were getting guns and stuff from the Americans, Trujillo being such a tigre and a businessman, he started selling it he wasn't giving it to them, he was selling it to them. So he started making a lot of money. He started investing it on land. And his eye was, Trujillo grew up poor, but at one time he became the 6th richest man in the world because he had his hand on every sector. And he saw the Dominican nationalism. He wanted to get rid of being head of the police and military. He wanted to get rid of those foreign investors when the Americans left. He's like, nah, you're gonna give it to me by any means necessary. So him taking so many land and industries, it allowed him to have this rags to riches story.
He took the Dominican economy to be his bank.
Yeah, so 86% of people being paid came to Trujillo. So that's a lot of people. So at this time, Trujillo wins the election. I'm like speeding through a lot. But in 1930, Trujillo wins the election. It was a lot of mess to win that first election. There was a guy named Fonseca and Ureña. We have an Ureña here. Hopefully Estrella Ureña, that guy's family.
Maybe that's the primo or something. Let me look that up.
Yeah, Trujillo did him dirty. So Trujillo, first election, yes. Trujillo, so Ureña was the interim president for Vasquez that was a little sick at the time. And he's like, hey, Trujillo used the army to really show his power. So while he was sick, he staged some coups, he was being rebellious. And people saw Trujillo, wow, this young guy is really, really strong. He's putting people in place. So when it was time to run, a lot of people weren't too fond of him, but he made sure he won. And once he won that election, it was all from there, because he convinced Ureña to endorse him as president. He put him as vice president, and later on, Ureña dies and disappears. Trujillo's power just rose to another level. All right, so the Trujillo era was considered as one of the bloodiest times in the Americas. Okay, it was estimated that Trujillo was responsible for the deaths of more than 70,000 people, including 10 to 20, even people say even more than that, on the Parsley Massacre in one day. Okay, and there was no guns, just machetes and sticks. All right, so it was a very bloody time. But side note, Trujillo's grandmother was Haitian, so it's a self-hatred thing when it came to Trujillo. But Trujillo wanted to set order. All right, Trujillo was brought up poor, but he didn't like the disorderly things of people not getting things done. All right, so one of the things about Trujillo is that his father didn't have his thing together. So he saw that in men, that if you don't got your things together and you're always drinking, there's a problem. I need to check you. All right. He really took his uncle Puerto really was in his eye like a hero to him. Puerto worked for Vasquez, and Vasquez allowed him to be a part of the administration in Iran. All right. And the Americans kind of helped him out as well, because he was not allowed in the military when he was younger, because he had a record. All right, he had a record as a young kid, which it was a kind of a group of kids in San Cristobal, which is in the south of the Dominican Republic. Shout out to all my people in San Cristobal. Okay. So him seeing disorderly items, and he was just such a perfectionist that when he got on, he demanded that from the Dominican people. He saw all the different countries coming at the Dominican Republic, like the Americans and different European countries, as well as Haiti, and many times, that he kind of resented them. And he wanted to make sure that the Dominican Republic was number one in this side of the world. He also looked at the American presidents like, esa gente no puede conmigo. Like, he looked at himself as the supreme leader of the world at this time. All right, Trujillo maintained a lot of power. How did he maintain a lot of power in terms of, like, because if you talk to a lot of people of that era, they will love Trujillo. Unless you had somebody really impacted, like I had in my family. But how did Trujillo maintain control? I don't know if you guys were able to get to that chapter.
I'm not sure about the control, but he established like the school system. So he was credited with doing certain things that were beneficial to a lot of people, right? To me, is the conversation that people confuse socialism with like dictatorship. You start with that socialist message to care for a lot of the masses that are underserved. And then when you get there, you just treat it like it's your own money. And then the greed takes over whatever message of socialism you had.
He wasn't a socialist though, because he had beef with Castro.
Kind of like Haiti.
He hated,
Yeah.
but he wanted an economy, and he fought for an economy. He everything ran through him. He touched everything.
So he built the schools just to build the economy, the labor force, basically.
So it's even more. You gotta get in the mind of Trujillo. Trujillo, you gotta think about like Kanye. You know, you gotta think about people like well,
you don't want to get into Kanye's mind. Yeah, right.
That's just like a very big. So when he built those schools and textbooks, in the textbooks, they will not. If you speak to I speak to my grandparents and people. My grandfather's 95 years old. He doesn't know anybody before Trujillo. That doesn't exist, because for Trujillo, everything starts with him. Okay, so when he built the schools and the books, it starts with him, and it talks about his greatness. So if you're a little kid, you're already brought up to that.
It was centers of indoctrination.
Even the radio, they have Trujillo songs. You had You had some people that may have television later on, it will be about Trujillo. The team Escogido is based on Trujillo, the chosen ones that Trujillo chose. The bottle, the Presidente beer, look it up, is in honor of Trujillo. Everything ran to Trujillo. Even going further, he renamed, what did he rename Santo Domingo?
Ciudad Trujillo.
Yeah.
Ciudad Trujillo. So anywhere you go, if you're a young person at that time, you're gonna see Trujillo. And it was everybody in your house had to have a picture of Trujillo. So if you're a young person at this time, you were like, it was in your mind. Trujillo was everything. You know, imagine putting on YouTube right now and Bad Bunny's talking about Trujillo, like, yo, Trujillo, and you have other people, it's like, it's just stuck. So unless you know, especially people from the town of Barahona have really caught the rap of the Trujillo family, or because his brother was the mayor there for a while, and Trujillo was, other than politically getting rid of people and getting people being anti-Haitian, he was very bad to women, especially young women. And I always credit women for the downfall of Trujillo. We're gonna get into that in the next slide. But the way he maintained control is how he controlled everything in the Dominican Republic for 31 years. Okay, from the books that you read, from anything you read on the radio, in the churches, some churches at one time, not all the time, because at the end of the spring, it was a problem. They will say, en el cielo es Dios, y en la tierra dominicana, Trujillo, amen. So even through the church, like everything went to Trujillo, and if you got $1, everybody knew. If you got a peso, everybody knew you got that from Trujillo. Ironic, I just came back from the Dominican Republic. My uncle, my great uncle, he was talking to me how much he still has a Trujillo picture in the house, and I'm like, you can take it down, man. He told me why, and don't talk like that. And I was like, okay, all right. I didn't want to get hit, so he's 93 years old, so it's like it's stuck. It's bad, but it's stuck in their DNA because it's hard to get out of that. Anybody have any questions? As well as you have people that fought back. He had a lot of opposition, but what happened to those people that went against him?
They got raped and killed.
Yes. So yeah, you were either imprisoned, exiled, or killed. So a lot of these things really played a big thing in the Dominican Republic at this time. But Trujillo did also a lot of good things where people always credit him for. That big debt that Lily's created and you never thought you were gonna get out of, he paid it. The warships that were around the Dominican Republic, just imagine, when I teach history, I like people to really see and put themselves in that time. If you were living in the capital from 1924 to 1936, all you saw is American ships all around the Osama River. And you saw that everywhere. When he did the Hughes Peinado plan, he got rid of it. No more. Now you see the water. That's something new. So some people that live right there like, wow. Trujillo got rid of the Americans. Trujillo aquí manda, and got rid of the debt. Now people are finally having a sense of nationalism. Nobody's picking on the Dominican Republic. Like people feel this sense of prosperity. They're having food. It's growing. The economy is growing. You could raise your family, and it was like very safe. That's what people always say. It was very safe at that time. So a lot of people say safe in terms of like civil crimes that were not really allowed, because if you would have got caught stealing for something small, you probably would have got murdered and jailed for life. So it it came with a high cost of human rights at this time. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like I'm yapping a lot. I want this to be collaborative.
I kind of have one because I didn't get to this part in the book, and I don't know much about the history, like anyway. But you mentioned how he got rid of the Americans, but at the same time, he had a lot of support, didn't he, from the U.S. and through the being trained by the U.S. in the army. Was it that he got rid of them, or was it more like he was kind of working in line with those like U.S. interests, Monroe Doctrine type of interests?
Smart.
Thanks.
Yes. So yeah, but remember, it's all theater. So politics sometimes is that, when they give you a pencil black, they want to take it could probably be that. But in the way it says it on books and things of that nature, he got rid of them. That plan, he got solidified. So when you think about the time of Trujillo's era, those are two big things that Trujillo was credited for. All right, and the other thing is that him being the street kid, he put all his homies on. When I say he put his homies on, you may not work in the administration, you're not probably not clean. And he went to prison as a kid. Most of those guys from the 42, La Banda 42, they were the ones doing the dirty work. So they always say Trujillo never got his hands dirty. Never got his hands dirty because he never got his hands dirty for the 42. There's a lot of controversy. So Trujillo's legacy is very clean because of the things that were reported, because he was a dictator. But his rags to riches story is what really tells people, wow, and everything that happened with the U.S. occupation is what people that are for Trujillo remember. But this is a very bloody time, and anything that you did, and his anti-Haitian rhetoric was felt. That people saw. But one of the reasons why the Americans, I always found this interested in the book, as two dictators, Castro and Trujillo, they didn't like each other. And it's because Trujillo sworn to be the most anti-communist leader in this side of the world. So that kind of helped in the rhetoric what the Americans was trying to do. While socialism was growing in different parts, like Nicaragua, Cuba, and all that, Trujillo was kind of helping the U.S. with anti-communism. So he always had their best interests for a long time, right? And anytime the Americans came in, everybody had to be in the best behavior. So Trujillo was looking like a good guy to certain people in the Americas. This is all propaganda. As well as when Hitler wanted to, so many people of Jewish descent were sent to, he opened up their doors for people from the Jewish faith. Why did he do that?
They were fleeing the Holocaust.
Huh?
And they were fleeing the Holocaust, and the US would not admit them into the US. And so they were like, people were like in ships in like by ports trying to dock, and he opened up the Dominican. I'm sure he had like some other reasons too, but he specifically after the US said no, he said yes.
He wanted to whiten the ring.
So he wanted to whiten up the ring. So he wanted less things happening with Haiti because they were too dark, even though he was a Haiti, he has Haitian ancestry. But he also wanted to whiten up the country. There's a lot of things from different cultures that you see. When we eat sachichon, that's culture meat. So it's like, there's still some DNA of their time in the Dominican Republic. Because eventually they left. But some stayed. We still have so many synagogues. And I just forgot the name of the town. There's some synagogues in different parts in Puerto Plata.
Isn't it Sosua?
And so, yes, Sosua.
Like that's a town I think they founded.
What happened?
I think I remember hearing, I think it's Sosua that they found, like the Jewish community founded. So it's like a predominant amount of that population.
Yeah, Sosua, and I'm not sure if they founded it, but it makes sense. I might have to look into that. But yeah, Sosua was the part, as well as Puerto Plata had a lot of people coming from Germany. My aunt she recently passed away. Her name, when I've read her, you know, when they give you the little piece of paper when somebody passes in the Dominican Republic, and we call her Doña Telma. She was everybody's grandmother in the neighborhood, and her name was Soleta, no, not Soleta, Soleta Shorowitz. And I'm like, wow, Doña Telma's name is Shorowitz Santana. And that kind of like freaked me out. I was like, oh, what happened? Oh, well, her father came from Germany, fleeing. So that's, it made a lot of sense. So you start seeing different plots in different formation, but he wanted to widen up the country. So Trujillo had a lot of policies that was very racially motivated, but a lot of policies as well for tourism and for the economy. That was his main thing, but it came with a high price in terms of human rights. All right, and one of the biggest human rights, of course, anti-Haitian. That Haitian policy was terrible, where he killed thousands of people, or the way he treated young women. All right, it was even known of his type. Like this is reasons why, if you talk to your grandmother and they're like, oh, if you have a daughter, keep her inside the house. It's like things like trickle down because of generations. You keep her inside, like a lot of people can't see. Because at that time, Trujillo and Trujillo had family members that were, you know, different mayors in different towns and things of that nature. They had a type for like, I don't want to use the Dominican terms, but you know, like sort of like mixed, long hair, young women that many ended up disappearing, ages of 16 into late 20s. And one of the women that he would always keep his eye on was it was from the Maribel sisters. So we're heading into this chapter where women start fighting back. All right. And this may not be in the book in terms of the women's movement, the Action Feminista, but I felt like it was probably like 2 sentences, but it's very, very important. And the women's the feminist movement in the Dominican Republic started growing. And one of the reasons why is because if you start at this time, women were only raised to get married and have children, but there was a lot of women seeing that they had other ambition. So at this time, women can be doctors or lawyers and things of that nature. All right, and they wanted equality, but Trujillo had Dominican Republic is still very machista country. But at this time, it was even far worse. Okay, they mentioned different parts of sexual assaults and the role of a woman at this time. And many women fought back, like Abigail Mejia, Delia Weber, as well as the Maribel sisters. I'm sorry about the spelling error there in the slide for Maribel. And they fought back. And one of the reasons why this played a major part is because when Minerva and Patria from the Maribel sisters were in prison, you had an American international organization came to the prisons to check if human rights were being practiced. All right, remember when the foreigners come in, they're always in the best behavior. You see all the best people. And, you know, so many people were very, very low in terms of, and people will only speak good about the video. So they went into the prisons to see if human rights were being practiced. There, they were able to slip a note in terms of that Trujillo's his conduct and to keep a close eye on him. At this time, Trujillo was out of line in different places. Right? They even spoke about a murder that he did in Harlem in 116th because a young man, doctoral student, disappeared. Do you guys recall? What was his name? I feel like I'm yapping now. Let's talk. What was his name?
Davida, save us. The ones of us who didn't read this far, please.
I know like 1,000 things about Trujillo and everything made of our sisters, but I don't know this one.
I'm looking at my highlights, but I don't remember the name.
I don't want to keep just yapping away for the whole.
I want you to tell us the name. I do have some other things to add about the women.
Mention that.
Princesa, we're hearing a lot of feedback.
¿Qué pasó?
Okay, so 2 things that I wanted to share. One is that they had songs about Trujillo's abuse of the women. I don't know if you've ever heard of El Jarro Está Pichao. That was a way to talk about what he used to do to women. And if he was going on a parade or driving down the street and he saw something he liked, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. He took what he wanted. And then the other fun fact that I was able to relate to the book is that since he was trying to build the labor force, he would incentivize families to have a lot of children. And my fun fact is that he incentivized my grandmother. My grandmother had 24 children, and she won some of his awards for being one of the most prolific mothers in DR.
That is an award.
Wow.
No, and this is why I feel like me and you might be cousins because
The Santana, yep.
Because my grandfather was number 33 out of 36 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And their last name Santana Rodriguez, but that's not everybody's last name. But yeah, so in terms of the workforce and things of that nature, and that was part of his downfall. I'm glad that this is the reason why I want you guys to dialogue, because I'm like going through the things. So he wanted that, but that was one of the parts of his downfall, because people would be incentivized to have a lot of children for the workforce. But then when the population grew, the amount of hospitals didn't grow. Now less resources and school size. So by the 1960s, people started feeling that wrath of, at one time Trujillo's economy was good for all the people that were there. But now there's not enough resources to go around because there's too many people. And that played a big part. So yeah, I don't know about your grandparents, anybody else's other than me and Santana, that we definitely have a lot of cousins, and that was that's something that he paid a lot of incentivized them to do.
And a lot of people who were born around that time have him as their godfather. Yep. He godfathered a lot of children.
Yep.
And there's a lot of Rafael people named after him.
Uncle Rafael.
Todo el mundo tiene un tío Rafael. Yeah.
Even my brother's middle name is Rafael because it's just now it's being passed down, but we're trying to cut that out. So.
Question on the student that was killed in Harlem. Was this in relation to the Rubirosa and when they were conspiring against Trujillo?
No, Rubirosa had a little bit of it. I don't know if you guys know who Rubirosa. They didn't really talk about him a lot here, but
no, they didn't.
But this is a doctoral student. I'm trying to get his first name. I've been talking for like 2 hours. He was a doctoral student that used to work for Trujillo, and he wrote about everything that's happening in the Dominican Republic in his thesis. And this would have exposed, that's how tight nobody knew what was going on. And he was a Columbia student, university student. And when they found out that he was writing about that, they went to assassinate him. And in 116th, that was the last place that they saw him ever alive, in Harlem. So.
Did they find the thesis?
The thesis is there. They said that's what gave him, he was able to, it wasn't never finished, but they were able to get the majority of it there. He has such a long name, I just forgot his name. Once I remember, I'll let you guys know. He has a very unique name. Once you put his name, he doesn't have that traditional last name.
Now, is the person that Yadira is saying, it sounds like you're saying Rubirosa? Are you talking about, I'm Googling as you guys talk about anything that I don't know. So I found this Dominican diplomat who was killed in Paris.
No,
is that who she's talking about?
That's who I mentioned, but there were other people that he was conspiring with and working with. Rubirosa was.
So was he like friends with Trujillo or anti? I wasn't quite sure.
Rubirosa was married to Trujillo's daughter.
So that's a son.
Oh, okay.
But he had a reputation as well.
He was a playboy according to Google.
He was the first 007 playboy.
Yeah.
So they said
died in a car crash.
Yeah, so they said the character that they created 007 is because of him.
That's crazy. That's kind of dope though.
There's a nice movie or series about his life, either in Pantalla or HBO, one of those.
Oh yeah, I didn't know. I know that they were creating the movie, and there was some backlash because they didn't want that guy playing it. But Rubirosa was, he was a character.
Yeah.
He was a character. At the end, he had back and forth relationship with Trujillo. Trujillo was such machista. I just want to add this. He was such a machista man. I just think this is wild. That Rubirosa started putting his hands on his daughter. And he was scared because she's like, oh, I'm gonna tell my father. And you know what Trujillo said? That's good for you. He's putting you in place. And I thought that was very wild in a documentary that I saw. And I was like, this guy Trujillo was just crazy, sick.
Kind of going off of that, there's like this story, because he like raped a lot of women and stuff like that. Sorry, is this better?
Yes.
Is it better? Okay. I was saying that there's like a family story, remember, because like he raped a lot of women and all this. That there's some like cousin or aunt or something that's like 1 or 2 generations removed from me. But some of us think that she might have been a daughter of his, because like some other person was wanted by him, and then he like cut up her husband or whatever and like chopped them up into pieces. Like, so it reminds me too, like Cuno Diaz called it that he ran a culotocracy or something.
I'm not sure. I mean, there was a lot of stories like that, because a lot of things that
No, it's just like one of those like family rumors, but it's interesting when you like, you mention it because you never know, and there's like, so she looks just like him, and it was creepy.
They said, repeat that the last part. You saying that you related to Trujillo?
No, that there's some kind of aunt or something. I don't know this part of my family, but like some aunt that they suspect her mother had been raped by Trujillo, because she looks a lot like him, and like at that time he like was raping a lot of people and all this and that.
Yeah, I mean that could possibly be true. But the thing is that
I don't know.
And to people's just to almost close out on the Trujillo era is that his time was a little bit subjective to many people, because there was a lot of people that looked at him as a hero. But when you start naming and seeing the changes, because many Dominicans started coming here in the 60s, started speaking out, they understood that Trujillo was not what they thought he is in the American sense, right? But one thing about Trujillo is that, yes, he brought a lot of nationalism, and he made a lot of Dominicans feel proud after the 1930s, because remember, they were being always, you know, a lot of countries coming into it. There was a lot of, they always had to be dependent on somebody. Now Trujillo said, nah, people got dependent on us. So it was like a us against the world type mentality, Dominicans against the world mentality. So he wanted to really put his place in the world by any means necessary. All right. He even, so and at the end, when women started fighting back, where Abigail Mejia, Weber, and the Maribel and the Modification sisters, I'm like, I'm talking for so long.
Mirabal.
Mirabal.
I just had to get them in down. The Mirabal sisters, they really helped. I feel like they really was helping expose him. All right. So
well, the death of the Mirabal sisters is like the thing, like the turning point thing that changed like popular tide against him. It was like that was like the final straw, and people weren't gonna accept that he would do that particular atrocity because they were young and they're pretty and they're, you know, educated and, you know, fairly middle class, you know, a little higher up. And they were mothers, and he would do that to them. It was like, oh no, we can't. This can't side. So it was really like, and that's why they have like the International Women's Day is after them. Like, it's horrible what has happened. I actually visited their house when I was there before. Saw their mom, I mean their sister, and it's just really like interesting, like what you're saying, how women fighting back brought him down. It really was their death was like, with all the atrocities, people were sitting back and noticing, you know, the Parsley Massacre, like you said earlier, even, you know, with him trying to like assassinate people outside of the country. But it was the Mirabal sisters and what he did to them that was just the final straw, and brought a lot of attention to him in a more negative way. It wasn't so easy to just be like, nah, he's cool.
Yeah, and you're totally right. But even before the death of them, when he went to the prison, and it was a slip that they said keep an eye on him.
Yeah, that's right.
And it kept the Americans to say, hey, let's just keep an eye on this guy. But also Trujillo also took shots. He went to, like, for instance, the president of Venezuela, Betancourt at this time. Trujillo took a shot at him.
Right.
He's a bigot, and this is documented in the book as well. That how you go to somebody else's, not hood, country.
Right, country, and try to assassinate their leader.
He's like, I missed. Damn.
It's funny you say that, because like my favorite Trujillo phrase is when he dies, like what is reported his last phrase. I was taught that when I went there as a student, and it's always been like the funniest thing to me that when someone tries, when you're being assassinated, in your famous last words, that they would be that. I mean, I think he's funny. It's like in the same vein as what you just said.
What was his last words?
Coño, me hundieron.
So yeah,
that was like the first like Dominican cuss word I ever learned. But it's hilarious that like he always knew folks were coming for him. He was low-key paranoid anyway, but I mean, he also knew the dirt he was doing and the resistance that was mounting against him. But when they and I don't know if it's ever been proven if it was CIA operatives or like CIA weapons were supplied to the people who did it, but when they shot up the car, that's supposedly, from those on the scene, that was what was reported, is that's what he said. Like he already knew what it was. He was like, you know, his day had come. He wasn't even necessarily mad at it. He was just like, ah, crap, for real? Dang.
And even the irony of it is that the way they lured him in to get in the car and go.
That's right.
But you know what? We ain't talking about rumors. We're talking about what's in this book today. So,
Professor Remy.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interject, but is the person that you was trying to get the name, was it Jesus Galindez?
Thank you. That's him. He was a doctoral student from Columbia University.
And was it true that he was an FBI informant, or is that?
But this is what they say. There's a lot of rumors behind that, but at the end of the day, Trujillo was not happy what he was writing, and he took care of it in American soil. That says a lot, you know. And nobody ever saw him again. his family are is always like, whatever happened to him, and it's because he knew he was gonna spill the beans on that. This is before the system Marable, the sisters, and to really highlight what he was doing in the island. Right. So many people, many Dominicans at that time, some of them were happy because of everything that's happened, the prosperity, because he did have a lot of good things happening in the island, like the currency being stable, the foreign debt being paid, but all the human rights violations that happened that were always kept under wraps. So thank you for that. So just moving forward, so 1961 he was assassinated, and then that time period again, when a president is assassinated, I'm going to try to speed up because it's 8:40 and it's late. So after being assassinated, it goes into this era of like what's going to happen next and who's going to take the torch. And the Americans always had an interest in what was going on in the Dominican Republic. So, he had his mentee, and Balaguer. Of course, he wanted his son to take over Ramfis. They said you can't do that because the Americans say you can't. You got to have the democracy. So, and he had his brother, as well, Hector Trujillo. But you can't do that because you can't go from brother to brother. And so he said, hey, they put Balaguer. So this is the beginning of Joaquin Balaguer coming in, and then but the world started changing a little bit. All right. So you got to think about this. He was assassinated in 1961. In 1959, the Cuban Revolution happens, and Castro, young guy, takes over. This is the country right next to it. I mean, the island right next to this big island, right? And so a lot of things are changing. Young people are seeing things differently. This is 1960s in America, where it's happening as well as in the Dominican Republic. So now there's a new guy running with a social democratic mindset of Juan Bosch. Juan Bosch was looked at as the second Castro because he was living exiled in Cuba. And the first political parties, the Revolutionary Party was developed in Cuba. The Dominican Revolutionary Party was developed in Cuba. And Juan Bosch has came back after the demise of Trujillo and ran against Balaguer and won. The Americans was not happy about that because they saw him as, all right, another communist, second Cuba. We need to get we need to see what's going on there. And he spoke on different, he spoke about changes in the Constitution, and his constitutional changes did not make the old regime very happy. So you had a lot of the young people, the constitutionalists, versus the loyalists that were loyal to the Balaguers and the Trujillo type of regime, administration. A civil war breaks out, and the second occupation comes into the Dominican Republic. So this is in the 1960s. Okay, 1963 to 1965 is a big war, and this is one of the main reasons why there's so many Dominicans in New York. If you ever walk around Washington and say, "Why is there so many Dominicans here?" This is one of the main reasons. All right, and so this civil war, it was a change. So the Dominican Republic started changing. There was no more Trujillo, and people didn't want to go back to the old way because with Balaguer, you're getting a second coming of Trujillo. Does anybody have any questions before I keep mentioning things?
Why did the Civil War encourage a lot of people or like encourage
Hey, you know what? You're kind of hard to understand right now.
I think she was asking why the Civil War incentivized people to immigrate to New York?
The Civil War was big, and the Civil War, there's an opportunity for people to leave the island that they never had the opportunity to leave, as well as this, it's a war in the capital. I don't know if you got, who has family in the capital? My family, I know for a fact, they talk about there was young people. If you Google you see a lot of young people on top of tanks. It was like a fight between the young and the elites. So the country was in chaos. The president they was trying to take him down. There would be no more of him. So it was all over the place. And this is the opportunity that the US opened the door in terms of, we're gonna get rid of Juan Bush from being president at that time. Who has heard of Professor Juan Bush?
We recycled, I mean, we just got into the habit of recycling presidents, because I couldn't believe, I didn't know this part of history, because in my lifetime, I remember him running against Balaguer the second time. And I'm like, wow, it's like we didn't have any new ideas, younger people. Like, why are we trying to elect these 80-something-year-old men?
No, but we did. It's just the way the machine was working. So the machine, political machines, because you had Peña Gomez coming in, you know, you even had, you know, God bless the dead of our recent, Johnny Ventura was the mayor. And he was also eyeing at one time being president. People don't know that. So, you know, he was the mayor of Santo Domingo. So there was a lot of young people that wanted, but it's just, remember when Trujillo, one thing about Trujillo, from 1930 to 1961, he eliminated political parties and things of that nature. So now people are starting over. And it's something new now. And but Juan Bush, he's the one that created the PRD and the PRD. He created both of them. Right? He might have fell apart from one to the other. It's because he's seen it happen in a different country. He was living in a different country. So the U.S. intervention was risen by political turmoil in the Dominican Republic after the death of Trujillo. So the revolutionary and political movements arose to the end of his control, and because they didn't want his puppet to take over. So to protect American interests in the Dominican Republic, they intervened to help with the political drama. The Americans wanted to overthrow Juan Bush, which is a social democratic communist ideology, and they wanted to put Balaguer to continue as president. But when you do that with the people were not happy, and then it just became a mess. So they had a lot of back and forth fights. The Constitutionalists supported, the Constitutionalists wanted a new constitution, which were Juan Bush's people. It was social democratic, so it's like a Bernie type of ideology, egalitarian society. They would label him as a communist. He said he's not a communist, but it was just kind of new. And he had a lot of the younger and the working class and the loyalists, of course, like the Trujillo middle class folks. All right, so by April 1965, rebellion broke out, and they demanded to restore Juan Bush. And the opposition was like, they're not gonna let that happen. About 3,000 Dominicans, young Dominicans died. And it was times that we were bombing in the capital. And, you know, so it was not easy breezy. It was an ugly thing. So the Americans opened the doors for many Dominicans for, you know, to escape that, okay? So right after that, they had an election in 1966 to make sure that the country stays in place. And Juan Bush actually wins. I mean, Balaguer actually wins to regain control after the election. All right, and after that, it's been back and forth. But in 1978, Jesus Christ.
Jorge Blanco, was it Jorge Blanco or No Más Luta?
Just had like brain freeze.
I think it was Jorge Blanco, that one.
I think Jorge Blanco was in 86, right? Well, I'm not gonna stay too long on those two guys, but 1978, nah, it was Jorge Blanco. He won in 1978. I believe so. Let me just.
No, sorry, it was Antonio Guzman.
There we go. There we go. That's how I felt. So Antonio Guzman won in 1978, and this is the first the Americans had to come in to make sure it was a clean election. All right, and this is the first time that Balaguer lost clear, and Guzman, he was a person that was very associated, a very rich landowner of fincas, country in the country, agriculture, and he wanted to put the country in the right direction. He had a lot of mishaps because Hurricane David hit the country, and he had to start with a setback. He always saw that the potential of the Dominican Republic in terms of building with the young people and the new government. After that, they said he committed suicide or passed away, or committed suicide during his presidency, or was they never say he was killed. But this created a lot of controversy. I believe that after some time, the Balaguer name and Bush name gave stability. So people just kept recycling them after 1986. So after 1986, you see Balaguer really old. He even ran when he was in 1990 against Peña Gomez. And he mentioned that it was discovered that in 1990 and 1994, he committed election fraud. And when he committed election fraud against Peña Gomez, because he was very loved. Peña Gomez is from Haitian descent, but raised by a Dominican family. He was adopted. But he was very charismatic, and people really loved him. He was the mayor of Santo Domingo, which his vice president was Johnny Ventura. So they had like this whole different type of administration, and he went for the presidency. He lost every time, of course, because he got cheated out of. But in his last attempt to be president before he passed, that's when politics took over, and Bosch, Balaguer, and Leonel Fernandez came together to create the Patriotic Front. So then Leonel could win, because they said that they never want to see Peña Gomez. So from there, goes all the way to the 2000s. And then you see all these political parties change a lot. Right now, it's a big political mess in the Dominican Republic, and there's a lot of constitutional changes. Fun fact, the Dominican Republic is the country with the most constitutional changes of any country in the world. I don't know if you guys knew that. Right now, they changed the constitution, I guess, again, because somebody tried to run again. But it's a country that, yes, Santana, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So a lot of people think that Peña Gomez didn't win because we are racist people. And I think, valga la aclaración, that he actually did win fair and square. We chose him to be our president, and he got cheated out of it. And aside from that, here's my activism coming through. Those Dominicans that were born there and live in the United States, we can still vote in the Dominican elections. You can still go get a cédula from a Dominican consulado, a consulate, and still be able to be engaged in the process. So even if you're a citizen of the United States, if you were born there, you still have those rights. That's it.
Thank you so much, Santana Dooley. And she's very right. So I know that we got into the last section of the book where it becomes more political and to the modern day until Balaguer, Leonel won. But it also shows all the changes that happened in the Dominican Republic and why there's been so many different, in every region you have a different type of subculture. And in this book in particular, it shows you how Dominican culture has developed from the pre-colonial times with the Taínos, from when people from West Africa came in, particularly people from Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, came in. You have a lot of different flavors in the Dominican Republic. And then you have different changes of colonizers. You know, you have from the British, from the French for a long time, and the Spanish. So I can never say that Dominicans are a set way, just one way. And then you have in the book, it didn't talk too much about the Lebanese community that came in the 1920s, which you still see a lot of people of Lebanese descent. The current president, Luis Abinadel, is from Lebanese descent. That played a major part in Dominican culture. So it's just a small island, the first place where they put the plantation system and civilization when the European contact came in. But it's also a place where a lot of changing hands. And then the fight for freedom, for total independence, really costs a lot of blood. And this is why a lot of Dominicans are so nationalistic in terms of protecting the Republic. So I always look at this book as the main book for my class. And then I try to keep it funky with other books like like the Black Jacobins that I use in the last book club. Do you guys have any questions on the book, history? I feel like I just yapped all day.
I think somebody just asked. Oh, sorry. No, I think somebody just asked what we will be reading next. If you have an idea, I think we discussed it last time. I'm not too sure.
What do you think I'm gonna add, Mr. Sepping?
I'm trying to remember. Last time we met, you mentioned a book about. I think it was was it an abolitionist? I'm not too sure. I actually think I wrote it down. Come back to me one moment.
And if you get, oh, there she goes, Carlos Cooks.
There we go. That's the guy that I was thinking.
So Carlos Cooks, a lot of people don't know about him, and I want to highlight him. He's really big. But also, he's, Marcus Garvey, Black nationalism. Some people, when you think about Black, you don't think about Dominicans being Black nationalists. So we have so many different pockets, and we have so many different pockets. And I just came from the DR. People are very proud of the African ancestry. I'm going to tell you right now, Mr. Costa. I'm from, my town is called Mandinga. Every time they see me, I'm Mandinguero. And that comes from the Mandinga tribe in West Africa. And you have different parts that are very proud. In San Pedro de Macorís, the reason why people have British last names, because many of those people are from St. Kitts and St. Croix and as well as St. Thomas background, even Jamaican background, that people don't know why. There's some British last names there, and they eat porridge. They're a little bit bigger. That's where a lot of baseball players come from there. So it's just like so many different cultures in such a small island that creates a very interesting place. So I think that we should just, try to highlight the different aspects of books. So Carlos Cooks, it's gonna, well, I'm gonna put I know me and Angie from Dominican Writers, we created a flyer. I'm gonna keep you guys in, you guys will see it. So then you'll see it. It's gonna come out very, very soon. And we're gonna provide access to a PDF because his book is not really out there too much. He's not really known to many people, but if you know Marcus Garvey, who has heard of Marcus Garvey?
Me.
She said me.
I have.
It's good. So he's a Harlem native, but he was a major centerpiece in terms of Marcus Garvey's way of thinking. Like when you think Black nationalism, you think the guy. And Malcolm X, you don't know the guy behind the guy was a Dominican man from San Pedro de Macorís, as I mentioned. So I just don't want Dominicans to get put in one book, like one dimension, because it's just so many flavors. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to hear me yap all day. But if you guys have any questions, I'm here. If you do not, we can end and set the next book.
Professor, is the book called Carlos Cooks and Black Nationalism from Garvey to Malcolm? That was the one that you mentioned?
You know what? He's pressing on it, so I'll tell you that right now, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's more about it's a compilation of his work. So we're going to be learning about him specifically. So it's going to include the Carlos Cooks and Black Nationalism, Garvey to Malcolm, as well as excerpts from the Harlem cultural political movement, because I want to make sure we highlight Malcolm X and his work with Malcolm X and Garvey. So it's two different works that he has. A lot of his books are hard to find, but I just want to make sure we highlight him before we highlight major books. And the book club.
Are we gonna be able to?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. Are we gonna be able to see like where Carlos Cooks like influences Malcolm X, like specifically, or we're just gonna talk about it?
We're gonna talk about the book, but the book so far I read one chapter, and it talks a little bit about his upbringing in Harlem and San Pedro de Macorís. So, and then his work with the leaders. So I'm currently reading it right now. I just got into, and I think it's so interesting. So there's gonna be a lot of us talking next time, not just me talking. So prepárense. So and I'll send you guys on my, if you see my Instagram or in the Dominican Writers website, we will have something up soon. We already have the flyer ready, so something will be up very, very soon, and access to the PDF is going to be up soon. So there's no need to buy. Okay.
Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. And
thank you for everything, Professor.
Welcome. I hope you guys enjoyed.
You weren't blabbing.
You said what?
I said you weren't blabbing.
You want me to tell you a secret? When I talk about Dominican history or books or anything, I'm very reserved in real life and an introvert, that I just come out and I just blank out and I just talk. So you guys gotta sometimes stop me from talking so much. So, but thank you, Princesa and Awinda and everybody in the class today, in the book club today.
Good night.
Professor, one last thing before we sign off. What's your Twitter? I think it's Twitter handle. IG handle.
It's my name, Remysell Salas.
All together.
Remysell Salas BX. Or you can go.
Cool.
It's gonna be up in either or Dominican Writers.
All right, that's perfect. Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great night, and yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you.